Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have another great session for you today about SBIR grants, and it's another one in our event series about topics. So my name is Shane. I run the events over at 10 Capital Network. We're really excited to have you. I'm going to bring our CEO, Hall Martin, up to get things started. But before that happens, just want to remind you on the audience, don't forget to put your questions in the chat box. So Hall, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks, Shane. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for another session on SBIR grants. Today, we're going to talk about how to spend your SBIR grant correctly. I get this question a lot from first-time grant winners about what you can and can't spend it on, and also what you should or should not spend it on. We have three panelists today. We have with us Earle Hager, Tim Raines, and Molly Schmid. If you guys could go ahead and turn on your microphone and video, we'd like to have you guys introduce yourselves first. Just tell us more about your name, your company, and what you do. Let's start with Earle. Earle, tell us more about yourself and your group.
Hi, everyone. My name is Earle Hager. My company is the Neutrino Donut. I do a lot of work with science and technology and the SBIR space and help startups figure out not only where the grant opportunities are, but help them get moving in the process and how to figure out how to spend the TABA funding in a way that is appropriate and advantageous to the companies.
Great. And Molly, can you tell us more about yourself and your firm?
Sure. I'm Molly Schmid, and I'm with the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center out of Pasadena, California. The SBDCs are the best kept secrets in the world, courtesy of your tax dollars. It's no-cost consulting to you to help you succeed. What can I say? My personal background is biotech. I've been in a series of startups. Currently teach at some of the local business schools, USC and UCLA Anderson. And I'm a member of the Tech Coast Angels and help look at some of their biotech deals.
Thank you, Molly. And with us also is Tim Raines. Tim, can you tell us more about yourself and your firm?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim Raines with Rare Innovation. My focus is on SBIR business development, usually post-award, but I also help find and write the grants. My focus is generally on DOE, NASA, and NIH.
Great. For those in the audience, if you have a question, post it and we'll read it out as it comes through. My first question to the panelists, and we'll go in order, is the SBIR grants come with specific limitations. What are they? Earle, if you want to kick us off there.
You want to work with the program managers and check out the sites for specific things that can and cannot be included. For example, you can spend money on the patent development of the patent, but you can't spend it on the filing. The filing, for example, is actually pretty inexpensive, only about $2,000 or $3,000. But writing of the patent would be permitted. The key message on all this is that you want to get a hold of the TABA process at the beginning when you're filling out your budget process. You really want to be able to specify these are the areas where I want to spend the money. If you don't specify, you're going to be assigned to someone, and they will have their own programs that they will run on this. So the message up front is plan how you want to spend your TABA money and go through what your options are and be specific in the beginning.
Great. And Tim, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, the TABA funds are probably the most misunderstood. A lot of people don't know who or how to find a TABA partner. And what I recommend is that it is for anything outside of the R&D. So it's pretty wide open, and you can choose your partner with most organizations. The DoD does have some caveats, but I want to emphasize choose who you want to work with, not just sit there and be assigned one of the large companies.
Can you define TABA for those who are not familiar with it?
Sure. It's the Technical and Business Assistance Funding, and it was congressionally awarded money to accelerate commercialization. So they weren't seeing the traction that they had hoped out of SBIR in terms of becoming a commercial product. And so that money is intended for business development, marketing, sales, filing, patent, those kinds of things that help you get into the market.
Great, thanks. And Molly, what's your take on this subject?
Yeah, and let me just say one more thing. Part of my message is that when you're writing your proposal, gosh, take care of the budget and do things right. But know that you have to say that you want TABA in your budget. It's extra. And oh my gosh, don't ignore that. doesn't come out of your funds. It's an extra, put it in there. You need it, you want it. And like Tim said, pick how you want to use it, but it's for your business to succeed.
Great, thanks. Well, you guys see a lot of SBIR grants come through and how people use it. After TABA, which I think would say is the most important thing on the list, what's the second most important thing that we should be looking at for spending and budgeting? Let's start with you, Molly. What do you think is the second most important thing after TABA?
Well, the second most important thing is don't forget the fee and don't minimize the indirect costs. Again, you're all excited about the technology and you say, oh, I want to put all the available money into direct costs so that I can do this amazing project. And that's actually really a huge mistake. And the agencies at this point even know that if you don't have indirect costs, if you don't ask for the fee, and you don't have other money lying around waiting to be used, that your business isn't going to succeed. And they will not fund companies where they think the business is not viable. And so you just need that money to do all the things that the business needs to do in addition to running the project that you want to run.
Okay, great. And Tim, what are your thoughts?
My probably spend a lot more time in the TABA world than I do in the budgeting of the SBIR itself. So maybe Earle could come up with a second choice there.
Earle?
Well, and this relates to a question that popped up. You have the direct costs that you can put in into the budget, and then your indirect costs that have to be factored in there. Your overhead rate, first off, there's a 7% profit that's allowable. And then also your overhead rate can be 10%, which is the de minimis value, which is we're not going to audit you on it, but you can go up to 40% of an overhead rate if you can justify the costs on those levels. So you have a balance between things you want to put in as per the question that was asked. Rent, accounting, and computer and office supplies, you might want to have them as direct costs as a way of managing that process rather than indirect. So there's a lot of places where you really want to be thorough in the budget. Now you're budgeting the planned amounts, not the actual amounts, and you're billing the actual amounts. So you can't run out of money, but you can plan a little bit larger, which will also give you flexibility in managing the process and allow you to shift money around. For example, if you put down that you're going to have a trip to New York City to the Javits Center for a conference, you can stick in like $5K for the cost of that conference. And then if you want to move money around, you can cancel the trip and then you've got $5K to spend elsewhere. Everybody with the PI is flexible, and as long as it's legit and real, they will allow you to they will allow you to do the spending. So build in room to maneuver, build in room to have different options that are available to you, and be prepared to shift and manage and bring your process in to be successful. And if they're giving you 300K, you should take 300K. You need to find a way to be successful. If they're giving you $1 million, you don't get a bonus for coming in at 400,000. They want to see success. They're offering you $1 million to be successful. Be successful.
So the question from the audience is, are there some pitfall things within overhead that are definitely a regular business expense, but not allowed? What would you call a business expense that is not allowed by an SBIR grant, Earle?
Hardware purchases is going to be a challenge. Lower cost things like computers and all that. But when you're talking about buying a really large piece of equipment, they're going to expect you to lease it. There are a lot of academic leasing programs that are out there, and there's a lot of places that will help convert the lease to a purchase later on, especially when you're dealing with a university who might be paying for it. So you want to try to figure out the equipment costs in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed and what you need to do for leasing. Academic leasing programs are everywhere, and if you're working through your Department of Research, they'll have recommendations.
Great. Tim, any thoughts there?
No, I think Earle covered that pretty well.
Okay. And Molly, any experience you had with this?
Just You know, the companies I deal with a lot are real tech companies where IP is critical, and IP is not allowed in as an indirect cost. And that's unfortunate, but you can use the fee. And you guys that are TABA experts, can you use some of your TABA for patent costs? I don't know that.
Yes, you
You can use it.
file a patent with TABA. So some companies will split if they already have an existing relationship with attorney. You can take say you get the 50,000 phase 2, you can split that off with your attorney or with a company that does do full services. I can bring in a partner, for example, to do patents if you don't have.
Great.
It's important. The only thing again is the patent filing fee, which is only a few $1,000s, but a lot of it you need to break down and figure out where the money needs to be spent, and where you need things. And certain partners will offer you a full package of opportunities. 10 Capital Network, for example, trying to plug in, is also doing a lot of work with a venture capital program under TABA. That would be an example of how to reach out to people and using someone to do a full service opportunity for a phase 2 grant.
Okay, great. The next question is, can you please talk more about the actual reimbursement process you alluded to? I understand that it is a bit different for DoD. You know, contracts are reimbursed after a few weeks versus DOE, which may be more grant, but still have to incur an expense to pull from the government account. Molly, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I'm not the good person. I think of myself a lot as a pre-award person. But the distinct difference between grants and contracts is really important to understand. I think probably Earle and Tim can speak to this, but you do need to know and be planning. Can you guys talk to that probably a little bit more?
I've seen a lot of flexibility, at least on the DOE side, in terms of how you get reimbursement. I have clients that, sit on amount of money for a while and then send in an invoice or their report, collect a bunch. It seems to kind of be all over the board and pretty flexible for clients from what I've seen, not too strenuous.
A lot of it's the decision that you make on how you're processing it, i.e. if you have monthly rent, you can send in for monthly reimbursement on that rent and put it in advance. If you have salaries, the same way. If you're looking to purchase something, you put that in all at the same time. So it really is a function of small business and pretty well the poor way that small business handles accounting issues.
Yeah, well, the DoD thing a little bit, I think is part of the negotiation as you're just before you're receiving your award. So you do want to pay attention to that, because my understanding is it's very milestone based. So you get paid when you accomplish certain milestones. So you need to really be thinking about that.
Right. My next question is, what's the worst mistake grant winners make when they budget for their SBIR? If you had to pick one thing that's above all else, aside from not putting in TABA funding, what would you think that would be, Earle?
Not understanding budget rules. You need an accountant that understands the budget rules. You need someone who is a CPA, and there are a lot of CPAs out there that do know how this stuff works, but getting somebody with that CPA qualification will make sure that you're following the rules. And that's an aggravation thing more than anything else. It's having a legitimate accountant certify your books.
Right. Tim?
I'd say choosing your partner. So you selected TABA, or you just, you check the box, pick someone that you want to work with, or that will work with you as a team, and then do work with them as a team. Know what you want out of that relationship, and make sure that team executes on it.
Right. Molly?
Yeah, just, again, it's a pre-award thought, but it's don't leave money on the table. If the maximum you can have is 300K, don't ask for 275, because they're not going to let you add 25 later. You said you could do it. So know what your maximum is when you write the grant.
There's also a lot of strict rules on the salaries and the expenses for people. You need to make sure that you're following the appropriate numbers Because if you do it wrong, you really get dinged pretty hard on that. If you're trying to put in your $300,000 grant, you want 125,000 in salary to yourself, that's just going to doom you. But at the same time, if there's a real number might get knocked down and you can't get that back.
Right. Had a question from the audience. Are accounting fees allowed in the budget? Molly, you've answered that. Maybe you can give us more detail. And then what other fees are allowed?
Yeah, and you do, when people are woohoo, I want an SBIR phase 1, my first recommendation to them is to go find a good accountant that understands federal grant rules. NSF, and there's a little agency by agency issue. NSF actually allows you to put setting up your accounting system into the phase 1 award budget. And I am pretty sure everyone allows you to have accounting fees as part of your indirect costs.
And don't forget, you have that 7% profit margin and the overhead rate, where you can vary a lot of things.
So let's get back into TABA funding. There's lots of uses for TABA funding. What do you think is the top one or two that most people use TABA for? Tim, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think predominantly business development and customer discovery, but I would look at other resources for that as well. Do some of the heavy lifting yourself, like programs called like iCore or Phase. It's now called Phase Shift with the DOE. Is you're the entrepreneur, it's your business, get to know those customers, and then use your TABA funding for helping you to develop a website or doing some partnership development, licensing negotiation, whatever else you need. But don't count on the other company your TABA provider to do everything for you. Be engaged, pretend as if they're your CMO if that's what you want, and then equally, I'd say maybe 20% of the time I see the money go to IP attorneys.
Molly, your thoughts?
Get Earle. I'm not the TABA expert, but man,
okay, Earle, what do you think?
It's important. I know it's important.
So one of the things our good friend Rand Paul has done is basically forcing commercialization to be a key step, and I would agree with Tim on that. Is that you really need to have a plan for entering the market. And on the phase 2, this is especially critical, i.e. identifying who's going to be doing the selling, who's going to be working with the customers, et cetera, like that. That is a piece that's often missed. The biggest challenge for a lot of these small companies when you got 2 or 3 people doing the science is turning it into a business. And that is a major step. It's a major undertaking, and a lot of people have trouble with that part of it. A lot of them are either SBIR mills or they're used to doing research and they want the next research project, but they need to figure out how to enter the market. And that is a really critical part of it. And that's what different partners like Tim, me, and myself and Molly do, is getting the business set up going, defining the product, defining the services around the product, and defining the customers and reaching out to the customers. There's a whole lot that we can do under TABA to help turn this thing into a revenue model.
Yeah, I wanted to add too is know what you want out of, what is your vision? Are you planning on being an entrepreneur? Are you ready for the process of raising venture capital? Then have someone like I do with Hall is I'll point those clients to the 10 Capital program because they can get a lot of traction for the money. And I can, work with Hall on that. If you don't feel like you're going to want to go through that whole startup lifestyle, then look into licensing, but know what you want ahead of time, or at least work with your TABA provider anyway, early on to determine what is your vision or what should it be? What's the right strategy?
Great. Question from the audience is more of a case study. It basically says,
I have a question.
Go ahead, Molly. What's your question?
Sorry, I have a comment. I'm apologizing, but I would say it's really important to use your phase 1 TABA to help you get your phase 2. And oh man, the agencies more and more are under pressure from Congress to make sure that the companies that are funded by SBIRs are commercially viable and succeed. and they are looking carefully. So if you've gotten comments in your phase one that are critical about your commercialization planning, then use that darn tab in phase one to make your phase two acceptable, so you get it funded. Okay.
Great. That's good advice. And so the case study in the chat box is they applied for phase one and used the default vendor LARDA. What is the best use of them now that we're quote unquote stuck with them for phase one if awarded? Earl, what's your take?
Tell them you want to work with Tim Raines or Earle Hager.
So you're not stuck with them.
Yeah, you're not stuck with LARDA. You are with anyone. I shouldn't call out anybody. You can ask your PM to change your provider. That is allowed.
Yeah, change it 6 months later, or is it just up at the front?
I think right away, as soon as you're awarded and it's yours, you have the right to talk to your PM about it. So I've known that to happen. I don't know at what phase in the cases that I've dealt with, but I did have a client that fired another person and passed the top of what was left of the top of funding to me. So it does happen, and it's just a conversation in a letter.
Great.
So the company like LARDA will take 50% of the TABA award and then use 50% for the TABA consultants. And there's a large number of LARDA consultants out there, and that would include Tim and myself. Molly, are you doing that as well?
I'm not at this point, no.
So, we would be, if you're stuck with LARDA, as so to speak, you can use us and we can help out in that respect. There is some variance in how the quality of them, but there's a lot of good people working with LARDA, but there's also, it's just a matter of figuring out what you want to do.
So the comment is, so if awarded, we can ask the PM to use another TABA provider. So just confirming what you said.
Yes.
That's right. And if it's a DOE, which likely is if LARDA, you can see other providers, but they're not official. Again, you can pick any marketing company in your town that you worked with, or whatever. It's up to you.
There is no qualification standard to become a TABA provider. It's mostly hanging up a sign that says, "Hi, I'm a TABA provider." So there isn't a qualification, but there is a word of mouth thing on people, what they think of the quality of work that's going on and your personal reputation.
Great. Now let's talk about SBIR in general. How do you see it trending these days? Is it going up? Are we getting more awards going out, and what's happening there?
It's a set aside, so it depends on the federal budget. So thank God we passed our federal budget finally. But no, I mean, it's going up because the overall budget's going up. There is a reauthorization that I think is going to happen in 2025. That'll be important. There are things that they put into those bills that end up impacting small companies. So it's worth paying attention to.
Hey, Tim, what are you seeing out there?
I think a lot of the agencies are moving more towards the DoD model, which is, I think a little bit, tried to model after the venture capital world, the Silicon Valley style of entrepreneurship with their defense works. DOE just rolled out Energy Works. So I think, I don't know how much it'll change on the applications, but I would just be aware that there are, I think, changes afoot, and be prepared to, act as if you're an aggressive startup and not a typical R&D company. I think
Say COD. What do you mean COD, Tim?
DoD, sorry, Defense.
DoD. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Very startup minded. They've got a very Silicon Valley kind of attitude, for lack of a better word. So SBIR has changed quite a bit, and once you're in that ecosystem now, like for example, Army, you can't pick your own TABA provider. They've got providers. They've got, but the upside is there's additional funding like the StratFi, TACFi, and other things. So they're really trying to accelerate, become an accelerator, I guess is the way to say it. I
got you. Great. And Earle, your thoughts?
I didn't skip a beat during COVID. Business continued. The budget's there. Even if they're under a continuing resolution, there's a certain level of budgets that continue when there is cutbacks, et cetera, the SBIR programs are affected, but it affects them overall rather than against specific projects. I would also note that the military, in a way of getting around continuing resolution, which is a limitation on their ability to start new projects. We use the SBIR program to start some lower end projects, and a successful phase 3 SBIR project will result in a no bid contract for them to be allowed to purchase. So there's a lot of things that are going on within the government on managing congressional problems as well as getting things done.
Great.
Yeah, and let me keep riffing a little bit on what Earle's saying. And I know my clients tend to be the biotech types that go after NSF and NIH money. And I would say both of those agencies are now reviewing their solicitation. And I encourage you, once those come out, to look at them really carefully, especially in terms of the criteria that are being used to review, because it just seems like they're putting more and more emphasis on commercialization as review criteria, which feeds back into this whole conversation about why it's not just the technology, it's how you're going to build the business.
Great. Question in the chat box. Tim, can you please repeat the additional funding sources you mentioned in reference to DoD and DOE looking at more aggressive startups?
Sure. So the DoD has a new program called STRATFI, TACFI. It's a hyphen, so STRATFI and then TACFI. And those are grant matching kinds of things. So what you're expected to do is, for example, I think it's STRATFI is a 2-to-1 match. So they'll invite you to apply, which means they want you to continue your research. They'll say it's $500,000, and you'll need to find an investor that will come up with $2 million. There's also a 1-to-1 match. So one of the other, I forget which one exactly, but these are, if you already have a DoD phase 1, phase 2, that's a great option for additional funding. And I think it can be as high as 8 million, something of that nature. So great product for investors to get some non-diluted funding if they're already on board or at least looking at you. DOE has a program called American Made Challenges. That's non-diluted funding. And as long as you've had an award of any kind, you can apply for those. And you just have to kind of keep an eye out for the different challenges and see what might work for you.
Well, I remember last year, the venture capital world was very difficult to navigate. We were going mostly to angels and family offices for funding because of the market changes and so forth. And I found many companies going back to picking up SBIR grants instead of venture capital funding. When do you advise people to say, let's go after SBIR grants instead of VC, or no, it's not worth it, you should just continue to find private money? Is there any rule of thumb you have there for them? Molly, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I guess I do have thoughts. I think SBIR and STTR funding is great for first funding, or even in a more mature company, new projects where, that you've got to sort some things out. But once you get some traction, you have to get additional money because there's just not enough cash in the SBIR and STTR awards to keep you growing at the pace you should be.
Yeah, I think that it depends on what you're offering. What is your innovation and who you are as a company? What I see, the biggest mistake I see, and for some reason it's especially in the NIH, is software companies going through the process. If you can get by with a seed round, for even friends and family of, $500,000, go fast and go hard. Why, you're wasting your time going after $1.5 million from the NIH. Your idea will probably be dead, especially in the ML/AI space. And I see it all the time. And if you can't raise the capital, then that's an option, but you're probably not going to win in that space either.
Great. And then there's a question in the answer box that says, my company is strong on the commercialization side, $60,000 in pre-sales, 200 customer wait lists, but having difficulty sufficiently articulating the technology side. Any resources for pitch submission for SBIR? What about editing previously rejected submissions? Earle, what's your response there?
One is every time you look at your rejected submission, the next reviewing group is different. So fixing it on the one thing may not make this, it may not automatically provide the answer to the getting a grant from you. The other part is, as I mentioned, was just talk to the program manager, get more information out of them, and see what they've got going on. I would echo Tim's comments, by the way, on the previous thing is, this is go big, go earlier, go home, which is important because you got to understand that if this idea doesn't work, there's always your next idea. You don't get one swing at this thing. You get multiple swings and you just keep moving. And the SBIR is validation for the VC market. So it's not a step back.
Cool. We're at the end of our questions. If you guys have just a few final comments, anything you want to wrap up with, Molly, for today's panel?
I'd say don't do it alone. It takes a village. If you're going to do this, get yourself some help. A lot of times just getting different viewpoints helps you see things you didn't even realize you weren't seeing.
Great. Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Molly said it best. I'm actually an SBDC consultant in the state of Colorado as well. And there are 33 states funded by the FAST program through the SBDCs. Look into your state, even if your state doesn't provide that, there are probably accelerators, incubators, people that can help you at low or no cost.
Great. And Earle?
I think it's always worth trying to find an academic partner that will help you, that helps validate the results on this, whether it's local or further away. That's one of the things. Behind me is a chessboard, by the way, with the black knight has advanced, and there's nothing on the left side with the white side, and that's because the white knight advanced and then retreated. Don't lose your nerve. You're going in this big, and you got to go stay with it and deliver.
Great. Well, thank you guys for staying on the panel. With that, let's go ahead and close the panel out. Thanks so much for great Q&A from the audience as well. Appreciate your participation. We will provide the recording to those who signed up for today's event. And with that, let's bring up our first presenter. We have with us Sajol Ghoshal of Advanced Telesensors. Sajol, go ahead and launch your slides and kick off when ready.
Thanks, Hall, and thanks for letting me do that. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, terrific. Well, it seems like I'm having some internet issues because I keep saying so the video might stall, so my apologies for that in advance. So think of your friends and family and raise your hand if someone you know has had a heart attack or has passed away due to heart failure. How would you like to see these tragedies prevented? I'm Sajol Ghoshal, CEO of Cardio. I'm a serial executive with 3 successful exits totaling $3 billion. So why am I so passionate about this business? My father died of a heart attack when he was just 51, and this left a huge impact on me. I realized I made a mistake focusing on engineering alone, and now I'm making up for lost time by focusing on healthcare. And I need your help. So the problem we are solving is reducing hospital readmissions of heart patients that cost insurers billions of dollars and many lives are lost. The reason is most nursing homes have only about 95% of the beds are not monitored, and this leaves patients vulnerable to sudden cardiac events. So the solution is actually very simple. You need a heart monitor that's always on. So we have a revolutionary way of doing this. It was developed at NASA and it has 6 patents. It's a touchless heart monitor that's always on and doesn't need any wearables. As you can see, it is mounted above the patient's head. The patient does not wear anything for us to monitor the heart rate. The way it works is we detect the micro vibrations of the heart using radar and remotely send alerts to your doctors and nurses on any abnormal heart rhythms so that treatment can be adjusted in time, thus preventing cardiac events from escalating and reducing the penalties from Medicare due to readmissions. So we have our products currently in 3 different nursing homes, and we're working with 3 customers. The first one, TRKD, we've signed a 3-year agreement, and we'll start shipping 400 units a month starting in June. The other two are in their stages of pilot testing and will migrate to those stages. All these customers have access to over 200,000 beds, which makes our customer acquisition costs really low. So we are now generating Medicare-based driven reimbursements on a monthly basis. So you're on solid ground with cardio. This is a cardiac data point from a candidate or a patient that was part of the PAM Health pilot. And you will notice that the heart rate variance spread drops dramatically after January 4th, which is very recent data. And it shows the indication of a medication change that has occurred. So you may be wondering, what is the big deal about detecting heart rate without wearables? By law, Medicare requires at least 16 days of monitoring data out of 30. Cardio is the keystone to Medicare reimbursements because we can automatically generate the 16 days of monitoring data without the patient doing anything or wearing anything, and wearables cannot do this. So why am I so excited about this team? I've known Frank for over 20 years. He's got a background in hospital operations, and I trust him. Dr. Jason Zagrosky is our Chief Medical Officer and a specialist in heart rhythms. And Trudy Leal is our VP of Sales with the background in remote patient monitoring, SaaS-based sales. The rest of the team has all the skills necessary to bring this product to market. So we have strategically focused the company on the $1.5 billion skilled nursing home market, our beachhead market, which is part of the $31 billion fast-growing remote patient monitoring market. So why is this an exciting opportunity for you? Our 5-year projections is $102 million with high profit margins. With 2 small rounds of funding, we are profitable. This minimizes investor dilution and leads to a great exit. So we are raising a bridge round, a convertible note of $2.5 million, and we have raised $500,000 to date to build our sales pipeline to achieve a $1 million ARR and complete our FDA 510(k) clearance. Subsequently, we will do a Series A equity round, which will be all the money we will need to bring this company to a successful exit. So keep in mind that no one is immune to sudden cardiac events. So join our mission to prevent cardiac events from becoming tragedies by deploying Cardio's touchless non-contact monitor throughout the world and becoming a part of this company. Thank you.
Great. With that, if you have a question in the audience, please post it. Tim, Molly, Earle, if you can join me back up here for additional questions. My first question to Joel is, what IP or intellectual property do you have to protect this, and where exactly are the claims?
That's a very good point. So we have 6 patents. They've all been granted. 2 of them came from NASA when we acquired the technology, and those have been exclusively licensed to ATS and Cardio. And the balance is patents that we have filed as we built the company.
Great.
We also have trade secrets, which are not patented. Part of the reason is to protect how we actually do the heart rate detection.
And how many years are left on the patents that have been granted?
So we have on the oldest ones, we can go all the way to 2030, and then the other ones will go further out.
Great. And Tim, Molly, Earle, do you have any questions for your side?
How do you compete against the Apple smartwatch?
Good question. So part of the issue with Apple is a twofold problem. One is they are not in any medical environments or nursing homes for 2 reasons. It takes too much effort for a nurse to manage the IT issue related to Bluetooth connecting to a smartphone or falling off. And the second reason is it's very hard for Apple to maintain a 510(k) clearance because every time they upload new software for a crypto bug or anything of that nature, they have to get FDA clearance again, which is a huge problem. In our case, we have a dedicated device that once we get FDA clearance, it's always going to have that. If we change the hardware, change the software, yes, we have to do that. But that's a normal process for a medical device.
There's a question from the audience. So Joel, can you talk about any non-dilutive funding you have received? And can you also discuss the competitive landscape, including any other means of RPM?
That's a good point. So in terms of non-dilutive, we've during COVID, we did get the PPP loan, which was close to 250K on the first cycle and another roughly 250K on the second. And that also came with an additional SBIR loan of about 170K. We've raised so far for the company overall about $6.3 million. In terms of competition, we do have competitors, and we have two types. One is companies that actually do non-contact radar-based monitoring. There's two companies. One is Netira, and the other one is Xandercardian. We are competing more with Netira, who's playing in this field a little bit more in the US. They are actually located in Israel, so they're making their foray into the US. Their device is a lot more expensive. It uses a much higher radar frequency, which is a custom frequency that limits the range for them to about 3 feet versus what we can do is out to 10 feet, which is more applicable for a nursing home type of application. The other company is Xandercardian. We haven't seen much. They do an ultra wideband, pretty large antenna design to be able to make that happen. The other types of remote patient monitoring are camera-based. So you actually have people sitting on, 16, they watch 16 cameras at a time on one screen for 40 hours a day. They switch between people, and that's a relatively expensive. Our cost point compared to that is significantly lower. But the other part is they can't give you any vitals. So they can only indicate if a person fell or, went to the bathroom and never came back. But other aspects of vital signs are not monitored.
Okay. Tim, what questions do you have?
I don't have any, I don't think additionally, I was curious about the, the funding, but you covered that, non-diluted funding.
Yeah, great. Molly, what question about you?
Sure. I'm just curious, what's your sales pitch to the skilled nursing homes? Why should they buy this device from
That's
you?
a really good point. The way the system works is we actually start with the cardiologist or the physician's office, and they have a slew of patients. Each cardiologist has roughly about 1,000 or 2,000 patients. That's how you see a number of 200,000 that come out. Now, of those patients, they determined which ones would require remote patient monitoring. And when they determine that, if the patient is coming through a stroke through a hospital, etc., they then go to a skilled nursing home. The cardiologist defines what RPM they will use. So, for instance, if the person has had arrhythmia and stuff like that, they may not use ours. They'll use iRhythms, which is a wearable patch. It'll be a 14-day patch that they will get data on because they really want to see that. So the cardiologist is making that decision. In the nursing home, if the patient's there, then that is deployed over there. And these patient care integrators we're working through, they actually go in there and do the install. And then when it's done, they pull the instrument out and it goes to the next place.
What's the retail on this?
So at the current point, we retail on the website for about $250. But that's a B2C. We're not really focused on the B2C. It's mostly for pilot applications. So our B2B strategy is close to $175, $180 with anywhere from $10 to $25 a month monthly fee.
Why aren't you selling it to me?
It's available for anyone to buy.
Well, no, but I mean, it's your targeted group. My mom's in an assisted living center. She's
Yes,
3,000.
so we are
She's
selling it to
3,000 miles
assisted
away.
living. Absolutely. One of the things, as I mentioned, we realized we had to keep our customer acquisition costs low. So we initially started with a B2C, but it was very expensive to target each assisted living nursing home. But what it turned out to be is the cardiologist will require RPM whether the person's in a nursing home or in assisted living. So we see right now with our deployments about a 50-50 nursing home versus assisted living.
I would just see breaking into a cardiologist and getting them to make recommendations is a lot more of a challenge than some sort of mass market process that allows me to purchase it for my mom. I think
Absolutely.
I think I'm a better customer target for you than the cardiologist. I think that.
No, I agree. I don't disagree.
So my next question is to Joel. What's your follow-on product to this? Where do you go from here with it?
So one of the most interesting elements is part of our roadmap, which is that we have exactly the same device, but with software upgrades, we can have premium services. So next quarter, we'll be bringing out fall detect. So right now, for instance, we do heart rate and respiratory rate. We are also now bringing out heart rate variability. We are starting to see the medical world now react to heart rate variability, something we had worked on over a year and a half ago. So that's becoming important, and that will be a premium service. Fall detect will be the next one, which will be a premium service. We've already developed apnea. We did that actually for baby monitoring, but the baby market was not, not as receptive at that time. But that was done for the baby monitoring market, but that can be used for sleep apnea, sleep study, and apnea detection. So that'll be the fourth one coming out. And finally, after that, we're looking at irregular heart rates. So we can start to detect patterns of irregular heart rate or arrhythmia, depending what happens and how we break that down.
Great. There's a question in the chat box. This is a three-parter if you want to look it up. In terms of range, how far, how close does the patient need to be to pick this up? Is this only working when you are in bed? And are there issues with interruptions of the data?
So that's a good question. So the device is relatively forgiving because one of the things we had to do is our first focal point on the entire design was to minimize motion artifacts. Because as you know, the entire job of the radar was to find motion. And so we pick up motion better than anything else. But buried in that motion, which could be almost 10,000 times larger, you have your heart rate and respiratory rate signals. So a lot of the AI and ML, machine learning algorithms that were developed at NASA were designed to eliminate a lot of the motion artifacts and leave the heart rate and respiratory rate in place. So with that, we can track a person for what we call normal movement. So they're lying in bed, reading a book, getting up to eat any meals. They can get up from the bed and go to a settee or a couch next door, next to the bed. As long as they're within a 10-foot range of the sensor, we can pick them up. The parts where we don't do well is if the person is, for instance, running on a treadmill, a repetitive action, or they're using hand movements very rapidly for a continuous amount of time. That masks the heart rate signatures for a long time, and we can't detect that. So we indicate that by freezing or disconnecting the heart rate and indicating that we don't have a good lock on the heart rate.
One final question there. Are there any potential adverse effects for long-term monitoring, i.e., at nursing homes or at home aging?
That's a good question. Those are some things I was also very concerned about. We did a deep amount of research in measurement. So the key to understanding how that plays is the degree of emissions. And our emissions are 100 times lower than what your router is today in your house. So with a router, which means you're about 10, 20 feet away from it, or even 50 feet, you're going to see a particular noise level of radiated noise in the 5 gigahertz, 10 gigahertz range. And our frequency at 24 gigahertz is 100 times lower. So we meet FCC compliance without a problem. And so emissions and interference are the two requirements that FCC requires. But the bigger challenge that everyone would be concerned about is the emissions. And we have a paper that describes how the measurement is and what the actual levels are.
Great. Thanks so much to Joel. That's a great presentation. Great questions from the audience. There's a poll there in the audience. If you want to answer that, love to have your feedback on this as well. And with that, let's move to our final presenter, George Gunling of A Credit Match. If you could go ahead, George, and launch your slides and kick off when ready.
Sounds good.
We see the slides.
Fantastic. Hey, thanks everyone for listening today. It's an exciting time for us at the Credit Match as we prepare for our initial market launch in June, led by our anchor clients in that market. I'll give you a brief intro of who we are and what we're doing. I guess I consider as a near revenue company now, finally. What we are is an automated home healthcare staffing platform. As you know, home healthcare is the fastest growing sector in the industry and will continue to grow with more and more services and procedures being done in the home as we age. So what we do is we match pre-screened caregivers to the needs of home health. Home health has a huge challenge in the fact that it's constantly changing need, and they've over the years had to rely on staffing firms and so forth to find the people because they can't afford to have them all on board full time because they don't need them. So what we have is a two-sided coin here. One side for the caregivers and clinicians is a flexible scheduling solution. It's kind of a gig economy solution, enables caregivers to control where they work, when they work, and for how much they work. On the other side, for the healthcare organizations, including home health, that we've worked closely with home health organizations on these critical requirements, allows them to spill, excuse me, I had a glitch there. It's an optimal workforce solution, so they can fill specific patient care requirements more efficiently. One of the things we built, I had a software company, we're building commercial SaaS products in healthcare, and we went out to the industry and said, what can we build that's a need for the market? And that's where we came up with a credit match. And one of the key needs when we got into it in the home healthcare space was the ability to not only have the caregivers, being nurses, therapists, come in for shifts, but they also need to do visits for various different procedures and so forth in the home. So our initial target market that we built off is home health care and home care agencies, home hospice. But we've also, with our technology, because that's the most complex area to solve because of security and things, we've also enabled the product to work for any other healthcare facility looking for the type of resources they need and when they need them. So what we've done on our targeted clinicians and caregivers side is we're looking at full-time gig workers, which become new, retirees looking to work on a part-time basis. Through COVID, many nurses, therapists retired from working full-time in a large health organization, large hospital, but they're still looking to be able to work additional work for additional revenue in addition to their retirement. And this way, with the credit match, they can look and say, gee, I want to find things within 10 miles of my home, whether it's a patient visit or a shift in facility. We're looking for hourly employees seeking additional work. It's another thing in home healthcare space. There's a lot of hourly employees that they limit their number of hours because they don't want to go over 30 hours a week. So they're looking for additional work. And then we've got full-time employees looking to moonlight and part-timers that are working through staffing companies right now and with huge benefits. There's two sides to this. Just an idea on the one side is for the caregivers. It's an iOS and Android mobile solution. On the other side, it's a web portal for the healthcare organizations. And what we've done is we built the technology, and the way I have it here is workers/caregivers, industry/healthcare. We built it so it'll work for any industry and any healthcare because of addressing the need specifically for home health. But what we've done is developed the ability to go through the matching criteria, to go through, have their background check monitored, and professional license verification. So what we consider that on the one side for the caregivers is a credit match verified professional. So they have to be in AVP status to be able to look for work, to be able to set gigs. But also for the requirements for home health, what we've done is implement an identity verification, visit location verification. So we know that that is the person going into the home that was really hired to go into that home for that visits. And then through the system, they negotiate the rate. One of the critical things was schedule management, because all of a sudden the patient can't be available or a caregiver can't be available. So schedule management was a critical thing that we implemented in the system. We have automated payment processing. So as soon as the shift or the visit is completed and the healthcare organization agrees that it's completed, then the payment process happens to go directly to the caregiver, whether they're a nurse, a personal care aide, or a therapist, and so forth. And one of the things that we just working with home health that are advisors to us, helping us to launch, is a communication platform. So throughout the system, they can communicate back and forth with text, with basic chatting. So they can say through the system, say, I can't do that on Thursday. I could do that on Friday morning. Would that work? So we've enabled that to make it so we need very minimal back office support. So in a very efficient process. I've got an incredibly strong team here with our chief product officer I'd worked with on multiple products that were implemented to market, a chief strategy officer, and a director of accreditation and regulatory compliance. We've also worked with, I brought our lead developers in that worked on 2 healthcare solutions that exited successfully. So I brought them on board to work on a credit match. So we have an incredible technology leadership team. And then on the advisory side, Carlos Morales is the chief operating of Caprock Home Health Services. He's worked with us and agreed to be a launch partner with us. And that's where we're going to go to market in Lubbock, Texas, initially, that where their headquarters is. Also, we built the technology. We've leveraged Chuck May and Inflection Point Group to help us to really on the marketing and the sales side of things, take this to market and developed an incredible go-to-market blueprint. So we're narrowing down right now with our market number 1 launching here in June, and then planning for 2 additional markets by the beginning of next year. We're in an incredible space right now, and instead of putting kind of a competition slide, this gives you an idea of Float Health. All that they're doing is sending nurses in to administer IV medications, and they raised 10 million in Series A for there. These other ones are kind of in the competitive space, but what they've all done is really shifts in hospitals, but kind of the same type of business model. And what we're looking at, it's an incredible revenue opportunity, incredible growth opportunity. We're looking, to build it up for an exit. And we've already been in conversations with some groups that are very interested. So we want to hold off doing that till we're well down the road on the revenue side. What we've done to date is I was the initial founder. I founded this company in February 2022. That's when we began to develop the product. I put in the initial 500. Then we did initial funding round, completed in June of last year for 500,000. And what we're doing right now is simply a $3 million pre-money valuation with 250 units at $2 a unit. We have 325,000 raised to date on that, with 175,000 currently open for additional investors. I think it's an incredible opportunity because we're near revenue, and once we're to revenue by the end of the summer and into the fall, our valuation will have increased significantly. So with home care continues to grow, but it's really still an underserved market. That's where we're focused on. So with the aging population and the healthcare services and the desire to remain at home, we know we're in a great place, and it's something that we're launching in June, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, George. My first question is, can you talk about the exits they have seen in this space? What are we seeing for fundraisers and for exits?
Well, as you see on that chart right here, what we have is huge evaluation companies that are in this space because of the fact of how scalable the technology is to be able to roll to markets. We look at it, we have over a 70% gross margin for the caregivers based on our pricing, which is what we're doing is a 20% increase on cost. So if it's $100 for a visit, the healthcare organization's only paying $120, a fraction of the cost of what it costs when they go to a staffing company.
Great. And Earle, what questions do you have?
I'm just looking at how ShiftKey is doing this. They said they got 140,000 plus experienced licensed independent professionals in the nursing community. I mean, is that the kind of level that you need to be successful in this?
No, what we're doing is actually we're taking kind of if you think of it, a Walmart approach. The fact of it is when we look at Lubbock and Tulsa, just a few markets, we're looking to go in and dominate those markets, and those represent about a $17 million annual revenue potential. And ShiftKey and all these, they're sharing resources. Yeah, they may have a lot signed up for them, but they're not enabling a person to work doing visits to the home 10 miles from their home or 5 miles from their home. So we'll be sharing some resource with them because all these organizations are sharing those resources. So one of our advisors that is a nurse, she is signed up for ShiftKey and 3 other ones as she looks for different work as an independent nurse.
I've noticed that there's also a thing where Walmart is shutting down all of their healthcare centers and they're ending the virtual healthcare services. What does that impact have on the market for you?
I don't think that really has any impact in the market because the area that's going to continue to grow is the home healthcare market and the home care that is being paid through Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance companies to provide those services in the home, which is drastically lower cost than it is to provide those services. The person ends up needing to go to the emergency room.
Okay.
Molly, what's your question?
Yeah, so I'm actually sort of confused, honestly. And I'm trying to figure out how to get in there, but
Well, that's probably my fault. So
no, it's just a complicated space, and I know there's quite a bit of competition in here, and it sounds like you want to dominate geographically, which I think is a good starting point. But are you imagining that the healthcare market is going to transition to a gig type economy, or is this just for the subs that, or
well,
permanent staff?
a lot of it has transitioned to a gig economy, and part of that is because so many retired and they're working as gig workers now. They're retired through the COVID thing. So all those companies that I showed on that list are all basically having independence. But one of the things that we've looked at is to bring caregivers into the market. So example is one of the nurses is advised with us is, brought a group of nurses together, and their thing was, gee, I drove to, I'm in Dallas, I'm in Plano, so they drove to Parkland as a nurse for 25 years. What they want to do is just be able to, to be close to home, work on visits and shifts where it's convenient for them, but they still want to continue to provide, healthcare services. So it's gig economy workers, but it's also people that are working, 3 12-hour shifts in a hospital that have 4 other days. Those are also the people working through these portals, and they'll work through us also, that they can go in and say, geez, I'm free on Thursday because I don't work Thursday or Friday. Let me see, what kind of visits or shifts I can do on my additional hours. So it's in addition to a lot of people that are wanting to be gig workers and independent workers by bringing those people the opportunity for, providing care.
Great. Yeah, Tim, what's your last question?
Mute there. Just wondered if you had looked into the VA and their home healthcare services, if there was an opportunity there.
I believe there is. Matter of fact, I met with a veteran last week, and he talked about that last week and the fact that he's sending in some of his metrics on his blood pressure and so forth. So they're remotely trying to manage his blood pressure. So I think the VA could be a really good opportunity because I'm looking at it as a big kind of home health care service opportunity, just as Caprock Home Health and the other thousands of home health agencies in Texas are doing.
Great. Thanks for that, George. Thanks for our panel, Earle, Tim, Molly. Great panel today. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience with us. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. 10 Capital will have its next roadshow event in the Bay Area on May 15th. Check out our website under events to check that out. And we'll be back tomorrow for our 10 Life Science Syndicate at 3 p.m. Central Time. That's what we have going today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will make the recording available to those who registered. And with that, we'll hope to see you guys next time. With that, appreciate everybody joining us today, and we'll go ahead and close it out. There is a comment, George, you may want to talk to hjf.org to plug into the VA. hjf.org, we'll have to check out what that is, but
Henry Jackson.
that's part of the VA group. But thanks for the comment there from the chat box, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll take that to now. And again, thanks everybody for joining. With that, we're going to
Thanks
close it
all.
out and see you
Nice
guys
session.
next time. Thanks, Earl. Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Tim. Great panel.